All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really pivotal dozen years that totally reshaped America and, honestly, the entire world, from the turmoil of the late 70s all the way to the end of the Cold War.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start by setting the scene, looking at a nation really grappling with the crisis of confidence. Then, we'll dive into the Reagan Revolution, unpack its complicated legacy, watch the stunning end of the Cold War, and finally, explore what it meant for America to suddenly find itself in a brand new world order.
So, to really get a grip on the 80s, you've got to go back a little further, to the late 70s. It was a time defined by, well, a lot of national doubt. The stage was perfectly set for a huge shift.
And you know who really put his finger on it? President Jimmy Carter. In his famous malaise speech, he diagnosed this crisis of confidence. He was acknowledging this deep-seated fear that maybe, just maybe, America's best days were behind it. It was a really raw moment of self-reflection that teed up a dramatic change.
Yeah, and this wasn't just some vague feeling in the air. I mean, look at this. You had a perfect storm of problems hitting all at once. At home, you had stagflation, which meant your paycheck bought less and you could lose your job. Abroad, things like the Iran hostage crisis were on the news every single night, making it feel like American power was just slipping away.
Now, while all this was happening on the world stage, something huge was shifting right here at home. You can see it on the slide. Power was literally draining from the old industrial Rust Belt and flooding into the Sun Belt. This wasn't just about moving vans. This was a political earthquake that created a powerful new base for a more conservative America.
And this new conservative energy had some really influential thinkers behind it, a group that came to be known as the neoconservatives. They looked at the policy of détente, easing tensions with the Soviets, and they saw it as a total failure. For them, it was time to stop managing the Cold War and start winning it.
So, let's recap. You've got economic chaos, a feeling of weakness abroad, and this powerful new conservative movement bubbling up. The stage was perfectly set for a new kind of leader with a very different and very optimistic message.
And boy, did that leader arrive. Ronald Reagan. And his win in 1980, it wasn't just a win, it was a political earthquake. Just look at that number, 489 electoral votes to Carter's 49, a total landslide. It was a clear mandate for his promise to shrink government and make America strong again.
Okay, so at the absolute core of his domestic plan was this idea called supply-side economics. You've probably heard it called Reaganomics. The basic thinking was, if you cut taxes on businesses and the wealthy, they'll invest that money, creating jobs and growth that eventually trickles down and helps the whole economy.
So, the plan itself had four main parts. Think of it like a recipe. First, big tax cuts. Second, a huge boost in military spending to take on the Soviets. Third, cuts to a lot of domestic social programs. And fourth, get a tight grip on the money supply to finally beat that crazy inflation from the 70s.
But, that medicine was really, really tough to swallow at first. The strategy to kill inflation, it threw the economy into a nosedive. This chart says it all. In '82, unemployment shot past 10%. That's a level the country hadn't seen since the Great Depression. For millions, this revolution felt like a disaster.
But then, just as quickly, things turned around. By 1983, the economy just roared back to life. Growth was way up, inflation was finally under control, and this dramatic comeback fueled Reagan's whole Morning in America re-election campaign, which ended in another massive 49-state landslide in '84.
But it wasn't all morning in America. This revolution had some really deep, complicated consequences that we're still dealing with today, from massive debt to a major scandal.
Yeah, there was a pretty big price tag attached to this new economy. When you cut taxes but crank up defense spending without cutting enough elsewhere, you get a whole lot of red ink. The national debt more than doubled, soaring past $1 trillion. In just a few years, the U.S. went from being the world's biggest creditor to its biggest debtor.
And right around the same time, a huge scandal blew up that really rocked the administration. It came out that they were secretly selling weapons to Iran to free hostages, then illegally funneling that money to anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua. The Iran-Contra affair raised some serious questions about who was really running the show.
So, while this drama was unfolding at home, Reagan's aggressive foreign policy was setting the stage for the final, incredible chapter of the Cold War. And hey, if you're finding this breakdown helpful, do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more explainers from our U.S. history timeline.
In his first term, Reagan really didn't pull any punches. He famously called the Soviet Union an evil empire and launched this futuristic missile shield called the Strategic Defense Initiative, which everybody just called Star Wars. To the Soviets, this was a nightmare. It threatened to make their entire nuclear arsenal useless and force them into an arms race they just couldn't afford.
But then, a new kind of leader came to power in the Soviet Union in 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev, and he changed everything. He knew the Soviet economy was crumbling. This led to a series of historic meetings, a groundbreaking treaty to reduce nuclear weapons, and ultimately, the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. The Cold War was thawing, fast.
And the fall of communism? It happened so fast it was breathtaking. It left President George H.W. Bush, who came after Reagan, trying to figure out how to navigate a world that had been completely redrawn.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The pace of change under President Bush was just dizzying. In the span of just a couple of years, communist regimes in Eastern Europe fell like dominoes. Germany was reunified, and the U.S. was suddenly leading a global coalition in a new kind of war in the Persian Gulf. The old rules were just gone.
So, right in the middle of all this upheaval, President Bush tried to give it a name, a vision for what was next. He called it a new world order, where the U.S. would take the lead in building a more peaceful and just planet.
And then the unthinkable happened. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union just stopped existing. It broke apart. Just like that, a superpower that had defined American foreign policy for nearly 50 years was gone. The Cold War was officially over.
So there you have it. In just 12 years, the world was completely turned upside down. This really sets the stage for everything that happens in the 1990s, which we cover in the very next explainer in our U.S. history timeline. And hey, if you found this breakdown valuable, be sure to like and subscribe to the explainer.
It was this incredible moment of American power, maybe unparalleled in history. But it also left the world with this huge, profound question that would define the next decade and beyond. What do you do when you're the last superpower standing? What kind of world do you build? Thanks for watching.